welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing something that's kind of rare, which is a book review for a book I didn't hate. I know, that sounds like I'm a very angry person. I do talk about the books I loved in my wrap-ups, but this book I thought was just so unique and interesting that it deserved its own video. The book I'm talking about is Nutshell by McEwan. I think this book came out in the fall of last year, but I just read it this month and I just wanted to tell you guys what I thought about it because the premise is pretty spectacular. If you didn't already know, this book is about a woman who, together with her lover, is trying to murder her husband. She's also 9 months pregnant, and this entire book is written from the perspective of her fetus, which is just super interesting and unique and such a good idea actually. And originally, I was not sure how that whole thing was going to be handled. It just seemed so weird and kind of out there and like a really difficult task that McEwan has set himself here, but I honestly think that he did overall like a pretty great job. This book has definitely taken some inspirations from Hamlet, and it kind of does follow that sort of same set, idea. And I think that this book was a very interesting take on that story. Altogether, nothing much really happens in it, so basically there's not a lot of plot. You can probably sum that up in a few sentences, but this book isn't so much about the plot, even though it's of course very important. I guess it's more about the themes that are brought up in this book, such as betrayal and honesty and trust and things like regret and taking responsibility for your actions. And I thought that that was all very well done, really. Even though the ending did kind of let me down just a little bit, I felt like this kind of book needed a real moral of the story, and it seemed sort of like kind of like a letdown in general in that regard. In terms of the writing style, I thought this book was written really, really fantastically. Like seriously, Ian McEwan has such a way with language. It is incredible. His sentences just flow in such a pleasant way. This is such a pleasure, a real pleasure to just read the words on the page, and I just really enjoyed that aspect of it. He does use a lot of kind of fancy words, I would say, obviously kind of higher language, which given that the whole thing is written from the perspective of the fetus, I did find it a little bit weird. I mean, of course, I really enjoyed reading it, as I just said. I just think that it didn't necessarily make much sense to have a fetus be so eloquent. And I couldn't help but think of Room by Emma Donoghue, where you have the narrator be the young boy, and he's I think 6 years old, and the style of writing is very awkward because it is written from his perspective, and he uses words in kind of a weird way. And while that isn't necessarily a nice style of writing in general, in that situation it made sense. So there's two sides to this coin, I think. On one hand, I thought the writing style was fantastic, but it just was not fetus appropriate, if that makes any sense. I was actually reading this book together with a friend of mine in sort of a mini book club that we did, and she said really early on that the fetus reminded her of Stewie Griffin from Family Guy, and I totally agree with her. This is one jaded fetus, I tell you. His mother would sometimes drink different kinds of wine, and there'd be literally the whole page just the fetus being this is not really the wine I like. I prefer this kind, and the notes on this one are better, and I get it better. I'm really? Do we need to hear about this all the time? He is such a wine snob, which is quoting my friend, and she is totally right. That is a little bit over the top if you ask me. So how the fetus basically tells the story is he hears things through the womb of his mother, through the stomach, and also he can sometimes see shapes if the light hits it the right way. And then the rest, the gaps, he kind of just fills in with guessing, which I think was done really nicely. At first it did kind of annoy me because it felt like such a cop-out, because of course the fetus can't see anything, so in order to make the story readable at all, you need some sort of descriptions, and the only thing that the fetus could do was guess what everything looked like. As I said, at first I felt like that was a cheap way out, but at the end of the day I wouldn't be able to think of a better way to do it, and it worked out great. It didn't really take anything away from the story. The main plot was the same basically, and there's just no other version. Maybe this whole situation transpired differently, but to the reader it doesn't matter because you just have this one version and there's no way to get the real version because This is just how the book is written. It made sense, and at the end of the day, I did really think it was a good idea to do it that way. But something that also kind of annoyed me a little bit, and like I felt would have been nice to know, is kind of an explanation for why the fetus is so sentient and so aware of everything. Like, he has very complex thoughts. He would like listen to the radio on politics and then like think and muse about politics and, you know, theorizing about this and that and being like so intelligent, and that was never really explained. The only clue that was ever given in any kind of direction was saying he was thinking that the babies that were born were inferior to the fetus, basically. So maybe, this is just my guess, it was never really explained in the book, that babies would kind of forget things that they'd already known in the womb when they were born, so that was why they would be inferior, but I genuinely don't know. I don't know if Ian McEwan has made any remarks on this topic. I think it would be really nice to know because I'm just somebody, I like my mysteries solved, and I like when people put thoughts into this kind of thing, but obviously it is not the main point of the story, like why the fetus is this way. It doesn't really matter. I just would have liked to know. So yeah, maybe I will do some research online and see if Ian McEwan has said anything about that, or if anybody else has any theories. I would really love to know. My friend suggested that that is just the way that we all are. Basically, we all know everything in the womb. So we have all the theoretical knowledge, but there's a gap between the theoretical and the practical knowledge, so that one has to just catch up. But it also doesn't quite add up, because then I think, like, with having known so much already, you know, we would remember so much more from our like infant times, I think. So yeah, this book does leave a lot to kind of speculation and for you to fill in your own gaps, basically. Like, how do you think the story continues past the ending that I think didn't really like end properly the story? It's not necessarily an open end, but it definitely is the kind of ending where you're like, I want to know what happens next though, so why did you stop writing? But still, overall, I really did enjoy this book. As I said, the writing is so pleasant. Like, just for that alone, I recommend you read it. I feel like this book could definitely join the ranks of iconic first liners as well. Let me just read that to you, like first paragraphs basically. So here I am, upside down in a woman. Arms patiently crossed, waiting, and wondering who I'm in, what I'm in for. My eyes close nostalgically when I remember how I once drifted in my translucent body bag, floated dreamily in the bubble of my thoughts, through my private ocean in slow motion somersaults, colliding gently against the transparent bounds of my confinement, then the confiding membrane that vibrated with, even as it muffled the voices of conspirators in a vile enterprise. That was my careless youth. Now fully inverted, not an inch of space to myself, knees crammed against belly. My thoughts as well as my head are fully engaged. I have no choice. My ear is pressed all day and night against the bloody walls. I listen, make mental notes, and I'm troubled. I'm hearing pillow talk of deadly intent, and I'm terrified by what awaits me, by what might draw me in. Yeah, I know. Isn't that fantastic? I thought so too. That's the reason I picked this book up, to be perfectly honest. I just thought the beginning was dead on. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, just in case you're wondering, because I definitely did consider that. Yes, the very pregnant lady has sex at several points in this book. And when I said earlier that reading this book was a pleasure to read, that sentiment was suspended during those times. Let's just put it that way. That is straight up extremely creepy. But as I said, overall, I really did enjoy this book. I thought it was fantastically written. The story is really creative and well done, and even though I did have a few things that I wasn't quite happy with, overall I ended up giving this book 4 stars, so I definitely recommend this to everyone. So that's it for my book review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you are interested in reading this book now, because I definitely think that you should. And if you've already read it, let me know what your theories are on how it is possible that an infant or a fetus can be so damn smart. Thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna see you in a few days with my next video. Have a lovely week. Bye!